No week in nerddom this week, guys, because I forgot we were going to Utah. We came into town for a concert, and I'm not going to shoot the concert, but I am going to shoot an adventure in photography. So this is Adventures in Photography, episode 11.
Generally nerdy.
Poor planning on my part because I don't have a checklist together for this, but there's a lot of interesting stuff to do. So this is the plan for this episode. I'm just gonna try and shoot a little bit of everything while I'm here and do a little bit of the conversation that we had talked about last time that kind of happened with those edits, but didn't happen like I had initially planned. So we'll do something a little bit differently this time, and we'll talk a little bit more about the shots. So the shots that you just were looking at are those crazy fountains, right? They look like umbrellas. And I'm also going to preface all of this with about a majority of the shots. I don't know if I can put a percentage on it, but a majority of the shots at least, if not a large majority of the shots, like 90% or so, are going to be shot on the 18 to 135, so the kit lens, for a number of reasons. One, it's my most versatile lens. Two, I feel like I can get some really cool shots with this, even though it's a kit lens. And I feel like that's important. That's one of the things that is important about these videos, is the gear that I'm using is less relevant than a lot of people want to think. So I'm going to use just the kit lens because really I only have one non-kit lens, and that is the Nifty 50, the Yongnuo Nifty 50, which doesn't have proper glass in it. It's a hard plastic that they use for the lens. That's why they're so cheap. But it's still a lot more clear than a kit lens if you're breaking it down to the pixels. Sorry, it's a little bright. So I'll probably shoot a little bit with that just because I really like that lens, but most of these shots are going to be on the 18 to 135. The ones, again, but back to those pictures though, the ones you just looked at, those umbrella looking fountains, I shot at a pretty high, the last few that were the up close, not the long range ones, I shot at a pretty high shutter speed. Because the water's moving so fast, like it looks, if you're just looking at it with the naked eye, or if I were to shoot it at like 1/300th of a second, like I normally would in this kind of light, it just looks like a smooth surface. But shooting it at a higher frame rate, you can see the water breaking a lot easier. So I thought that was a really interesting way to do it. So I bumped up the ISO, and then also bumped up the shutter speed, because when you bump up your ISO, it's your holy trinity of light, right? ISO goes up. In order to keep it dark, you have to also bump up the shutter speed. So the ISO is right about 2 to 400, and the shutter speed was just shy of 0.002 of a second. So interesting little fountain that we found down here in the middle of Salt Lake. And now we're gonna go probably walk around downtown, maybe shoot some Temple Square, and other fun things. Yeah. And in the vein of just doing random things and being in Temple Square, we're gonna do a little B-roll challenge in Temple Square. So if you've never been to Salt Lake, hopefully I can get an interesting look at one of the biggest tourist attractions. Even if you're not a member of the LDS Church, you still should come to Temple Square to see it. But if you don't get that opportunity, I'm going to show you some really cool stuff. that's Temple Square. Some of the things in Temple Square. I feel like there's a lot more, but it's like inside the building, some of the buildings, and you can't really do a whole lot of photography in there. So we didn't. But yeah, it's really cool. I feel like I got some really good B-roll, and editing it together should be a lot simpler than that fountain, because I took way too much B-roll at the fountain in New Orleans. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting better at the B-roll thing. The reason we even came into Salt Lake for the week, aside from seeing my family, which is always good, is because we're coming to see a concert. We're coming to see Jack White specifically, and it's at a really unique place that I feel like I was here once as a child, and not even to this building, because I don't remember this building. It kind of looks, you can see it behind me, see, check that out. Kind of looks like the friggin' Taj Mahal or something. It's called the Saltaire, and I'm gonna get some shots and maybe some B-roll, hopefully. Well, we're waiting because we got here a little over an hour before doors, so probably an hour and a half before any music actually starts playing. Yeah, so this is the Great Saltaire. Maybe I can get some of the Great Salt Lake while I'm shooting, but I don't know. We'll try things and stuff, and yeah. So you can probably still see it behind me. That's the line, and I obviously can't bring the camera in because as much as I would love to, I am not shooting the show. Not that good of a photographer yet. But yeah, so we're going to drop the stuff off back in the car and then wait in line to see Jack White. Next time you will see us, we will have our faces sufficiently rocked. I wish I could have had my camera inside the Great Saltaire because it's really a strange venue. And again, camera, shadows, things. But that, I mean, you saw a little bit of it. It's very interesting and still shooting. I was going to try and get some with the 50mm, but it's just easier with the crazy zoom lens. So haven't shot anything with the 50mm. This is our last night here. We're leaving tomorrow evening from Salt Lake back to Colorado. So we're going to be doing the sign off probably in one of the next little video segments. But I'm going to shoot something with the 50, probably a little bit of B-roll or something on the way home. But that was a hell of a concert. Jack White is an amazing musician. His bass player was really mediocre though. Couldn't find the pocket to save his life. First he was in front of the beat, then he was behind the beat, and sometimes in the same phrase. And I was super unimpressed with his bass player, but his drummer and his keyboard player that wasn't sick were all amazing. All amazing. But none of them could hold a candle to Jack White. And I guess now we're heading home. So here we are in the future one more time. This very likely is going to be a regular part of the Adventures in Photography from here on out. Unless it starts getting redundant, and then I'll figure out a way to spice it up or get rid of it entirely. So we have all of the pictures. This is before I've edited any pictures, so we're not all the way in the future just yet. But this is a little while after the filming of the rest of the stuff. So all of the pictures have been loaded into Lightroom. So we're gonna go into Lightroom right now and look at these pictures. So this, I feel like, is going to be the one that we do for this video. I mean, I've got a few of them that are similar. I just feel like this was my best choice. I like this one the most. So this is what we're doing. Basic stuff. We're in the library module right now. Let's get over to the develop module. Basically, I mean, it's all pretty much the same as the last video. First off, but this time we're going to go all the way through the Photoshop elements and everything. So first things first, let's do our color, because that's not exactly what it looked like in the viewfinder. I'm gonna hit it with a touch more saturation this time, and always with the clarity. It's probably too much there, right about there. So generally when I'm doing these things, when I'm playing with these levers, I take it past where it looks natural and then bring it back until it looks natural again. So that's what I do with the clarity. Clarity, usually I can bump it all the way to 100 unless there's a human subject, which is kind of the case here. It's not the entire human subject, it's just Meg's legs, but we don't want them to look unrealistic, so we bring it back right about here is about where it looks the most real. But it still looks kind of flat. So the other thing we're doing, because we're still in the light area of things, color, again, you can throw that vibrance all the way up. With most people, I don't really do any saturation. With most images, I don't really do much saturation at all. This one's a little flat. I had the ND filter on for this, as you can see, because we have the little bit of vignetting around the corners. So I had the ND filter on when I was shooting this, because I was also doing video and it was really bright, and this was on the Great Salt Lake, so lots of brightness, not super conducive to video. So I had the ND filter on, and we're still playing with light, but like I said, you'll notice it's still pretty flat. So we're gonna bump the contrast until we get some true blacks, and generally I like to bump that contrast until I start to see the clip. And a little bit of clipping is okay, because again, we want some true black. We don't want it to do that though, because then that's way too much black. That's unrealistic. So bring it back again, just a touch of that clip is fine. And you can click here to turn on and off the clip, and then here is your white clip. So if anything in the top end of your histogram were clipping, you would be able to see it if it were activated like that. But I generally don't do much on the white side of things. Something I wanted to touch on this time as well is on the light is if you'll notice, when I highlight exposure, it also highlights up here this middle section, and if you mouse over up here, it's the same thing. You can click and drag it here, just the same as dragging here. Or if you want a little bit more precision, you click and drag it here, and it's a different drag. So that kind of gives you a better idea. The reason that's useful is it kind of gives you a better idea of where you're editing, what area of the light you're editing. So here, the exposure knob is this dead center area. So this is and it's also the widest, if you'll notice here. And then down here is the shadows, it's narrow, and then the blacks is even more narrow. And then above it we have highlights, which is just as narrow as the shadows, but it's on the top obviously. And then whites again is just as narrow as the darks, or as the blacks rather. So I prefer to do it with these knobs, and then if I need to fine tune, I'll do it over here. I don't generally move it up here just because I can't see the value, but I mean, if it works for you, then it works for you. So exposure, I feel like we could actually bring it down back to 0 because it was pretty good where it was. we're going to bring the highlights down just a touch, because I feel like this area is a little too highlighted. And then shadows as well, we're going to bring down just a little bit so that we get more of a natural blend from the absolute black to these highlights. And then usually I'll leave the whites and blacks alone if the highlight, well, and if the dark area like this right here gets a little too clippy, then you can bump up those blacks just a bit. There we go. And now what we're noticing is the general tone of color. So we're going to go back into the color side of it. General tone is a little off. So let's play with the temperature. Actually the tint, because it is a little too green. So we're going to get a little bit more reds in there, which is purple in the tint scale. And that's alright. Let's see what happens if we... There we go. That's even better. Oh, too far in yellow. And now that we've done that, we can actually probably bring this saturation back a hair, so that we don't get too much of that yellow undertone in her skin. So that looks okay. Let's zoom a little bit and see. Have a little bit of chromatic aberration. That's what that is right there, that color that you're seeing. That's chromatic aberration. That's from the lens. So we can go down here. Lens corrections. Remove chromatic aberration. Let's see how well that did it for us. Pretty darn well, because it's not there anymore. You can still see a hint of it here, but I mean, unless you're really zooming in on these pictures, you're not going to see that. And for our purposes, you're definitely not going to see that. The thing I haven't learned to do, because this is the first time I've really had this issue, is this vignetting from the filter. I mean, I will learn, but if you know how, or if you know of a place to point me to do that, then we can talk about it for everybody else in the next one. But I'm not super bothered by the vignetting, because it's not detracting from the rest of the image, so that's fine. Sharpness, it's sharpening, so this gives us a little, that's the general image, it's a square version of it. But this kind of zooms in so that we can see if there's any need for the sharpening. Let's... Right here would probably be the best idea of what sharpening we should do. Right on those eyelets. So that, we can probably make that a little bit, because if you play with the sharpening too much, then it really starts to look bad. See, like if I go all the way up, then we get all of this noise, and it brings out every little bit of noise, so we don't want to do that. But bringing it right about here, maybe even a couple more points, right about there probably, just makes it pop that much more. Noise reduction, this isn't a very noisy picture, so we're not going to worry about that. This will, if you crank the noise reduction, let's do it real quick. If you crank the noise reduction, it starts to make it look like a painting, because everything just looks a little too smooth. You'll see it here and up here in the leg itself. Right here on the boot, though, is probably the best example of it. See that? It just kind of looks like a painting, and then if we bring it back down, and the luminance side of the noise reduction, that's what does it. So if we bring it back down, now you can see all of that texture and the noise from the camera itself. Color, this is something that you can see best up here. Let's find a noisy-ish spot. Well, this picture doesn't have a whole lot of color issues. So color in the noise reduction makes all, so this, I mean, again, you can't really see it very well, but right here, if you'll notice, we have the noise again from the camera, and it's kind of, the pixels are all different colors. So if you bump up your color noise reduction, all that really does is make these pixels more similar to the pixels surrounding them. So it's not going to be anything super noticeable. Usually I will just crank the color noise reduction all the way up so that you have less of those random transients, I guess you could call them. I mean, most of my terminology is going to be from music, so I apologize if that's not the proper word for it, but that's kind of what they are. They're just like, it'll be a dark red setting and you'll randomly have blue pixels in the middle of it, and so bumping that color knob up makes everything mesh together. It's all red at that point. And I've yet to see any negatives from bumping the color all the way up, so I kind of just do that as a rule. So that's basically again, this is not anything too far off from what we did in Lightroom last time, but now that we have all the Lightroom stuff taken care of, let's go over to Photoshop. So remember, and I figured out how to get the drop menus to open up with OBS. So yay, pat myself on the back. So when you're in the develop model, this works in the library module as well, but generally speaking, you're going to be in the develop module. You can go down to your image here, right click it, and go up to edit in, and we are going to edit in Adobe Photoshop CC 2018 because that's what we're working with. Now we are in Photoshop, and really minor things in Photoshop. I mean, in here I could probably get rid of the vignetting because this one I do know. So let's do that real quick, shall we? Oh, by the way, I'm on the other side of the screen now. So like this. Probably just fill that. Contents are content aware. Let's see what happens. Abracadabra, there's one. This one's going to be a little trickier because it is the mountain. So this, I bet we can camera raw filter and bring up the exposure. Well, let's do a graduated filter. Go this way. Oops, I went the wrong direction. Ah. Graduated filter to block out the rest of the bits, and then bring that up, contrast, but that does a decent job. That's probably not exactly what we were looking for. So go to the history. Let's try that again. Filter. Camera. Graduated filter. Let's do it this way. That looks a little better. There we go. Less of a distraction, looks more natural. And then these down here, I bet we can just content fill as well. Content aware. Sure enough, and that one just looks like it's part of the shadow, so no need to touch that one. So that's the real basic way to get rid of that vignetting. I mean, if you notice that it still looks a little unnatural, you can go back and tweak it a little bit more. Likely the end product will get a little bit more tweaked before you see it, or you just saw it in the video. So I fixed it more, but that's a real basic way to do that. If you know of a better way, let's have that discussion in the comments. But I mean, it was simple enough. It took me 2 minutes to do that, so nothing crazy. So the big part about saving your projects for sharing on social media, for actually sharing in most realms, unless you're planning on printing it, and then the process is similar but not exactly the same. So big thing, and if you've ever posted a picture that you edited in Photoshop to, say, Instagram, specifically to Instagram, then you've seen it change. The colors die effectively. They become super flat, and for whatever reason, it's just not as vibrant as the picture you edited. And it took me a long time to figure out why that is. The reason that is, if you look right down here, right here it says Pro Photo. I'm down in the bottom left corner if you can't see the mouse. Pro Photo RGB 16-bit. So that is the resolution, not just the resolution, that's the color space is the proper term. That's the color space that the camera takes pictures in. Really the only thing that can see that color space, even the human eye doesn't really see that color space, because Pro Photo RGB goes into infrared, and so we can't, or ultraviolet rather, so we can't see ultraviolet with just the naked eye. So it's a lot more visible than what we can even see. So let alone, and most computer monitors don't do anything in that high. So even this, what we're looking at right now, is not actual Pro Photo. It's a close approximation, but is not the real thing. So in order to stop Instagram and Facebook and other social medias from editing your picture for you, you want to cut them off at the pass. So what you do is you go into edit. I'm not entirely sure how to do this on a Mac. I would imagine it's the same, because most of these menus are the same on a Mac, specifically the edit menu. It might be in the main menu that you would get by clicking this icon on a Mac. I can't remember, but again, I'm pretty sure it's in the edit menu. So you go edit, convert to profile. Now this destination space right here is where it is going to be converted to. And generally speaking, working RGB, sRGB, and then it's got this identification number here, is what everything uses. I mean, there's a million different color spaces. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but these are video color spaces. ARRI is a camera maker. So Fujifilm, different color spaces. So you've got all of these different ones to play with, but 99.99% of the time, the one you're going to want is this one. Unless you're printing, and then you're going to want that one. So the working RGB, sRGB is the one we want to transfer to, or convert to rather, and so we are going to click OK. It's going to take it a second, and now it looks basically the same, but when you upload this to Instagram, it's not going to change the colors on you. So that's the biggest thing that I wanted to do. That's the reason we went all the way through to Photoshop. So now just file, save as, and save the image however you want. Already in the folder we want, because that's where we opened it up from. Don't want to save it as a TIFF, we want to save it as a JPEG. And Salt Lake City 001. Maximum, I always do, because JPEGs are so small anyway, you want to try and get as much resolution out of them as possible, unless you're sending proofs to a client, and in which case I drop that down to half, so 6. But for these purposes, maximum is exactly where you want it, so okay, and that is how we do that. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end of this goofy video. I feel like these Adventures in Photography videos are getting better and better, so if you agree with me, definitely click that thumbs up, let me know you agree, let me know you like these things. If you're new to this channel, click that subscribe button, and make sure you ring the bell so that you get alerted whenever I post new videos. The Adventures in Photography is kind of sporadic. I usually do about one a month, but we do have a daily nerd news update video. It's the Week in Nerddom. That happens basically Monday through Saturday. If you are a patron, that's Monday through Saturday. If you're not a patron, then it is Tuesday through Sunday. Normally, we haven't done the supplemental video, which is the last video of the week, for a couple of weeks, and it's probably going to be a couple more weeks before it comes back, so we're just doing 5 instead of 6 a week. But either way, you get all of that. If you're a patron, you get every one of these videos early. The Nerddom videos are a day early. Adventures in Photography is generally 3 days early. Interviews are 3 to 5 days early. Cosplay is 5 days early. So all of the things you get early, and you get more over on the Patreon. That's patreon.com/generallynerdy. So go check it out. You can join for just $1 a month. There's so much content for that extra $1. But again, I appreciate everything you guys do. Just watching this is good enough most of the time. So thank you very much again for watching. And I gotta do the sign off now because we're done. So before we go, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and sometimes we take pictures.